I have been wanting to paint miniatures for a while now. Actually, I got the miniatures I wanted to paint years ago, and the paint I wanted to use like 2 years ago, and it has just all been sitting on a shelf for all this time. But now, finally, it is time to slay the gray. So I'm an absolute beginner when it comes to miniature painting. I watched some YouTube videos, I read some stuff online, and I think I've got a pretty good idea of how it should work. But of course, no master has ever fallen from the sky, so I will make mistakes along the way. Still, you learn from your mistakes, and maybe you will learn something along the way as well. So I invite you to come along on this battle, this multi-episode series to slay the Grey. Let's get started. If you like my stuff, please consider to like, share and subscribe. It really helps the channel out. So years ago, I got this Conan the Barbarian board game from Kickstarter, only because it's got awesome minis like this Eldritch Abomination here. And it's got actually a lot of minis. I did the math and I paid less than €1 per miniature. I've got like 120 of these or something. So these shall be my victims for today. This undead warrior, first victim. Second victim shall be this other undead warrior with the great cleaver. Bit of a mummy. The third victim will be a guardsman with the halberd. And the fourth and final victim shall be this dire wolf or warg. The rest shall be spared for today. So, this is where we start at. The first step in painting is priming the miniatures. I'm using Army Painter Matte Black here. Using a spray can such as this, it's easy to prime a lot of miniatures quickly and evenly. So after shaking it vigorously for longer than I did, for 1 to 2 minutes, to distribute all the paint particles, you spray from a distance of about 20 centimeters and try to get a thin, even coat, and try to hit it from all sides. After use, you can clean out the nozzle of the spray can, just put it upside down and spray until no more color comes out, just a bit of mist from the paint. And this is what my miniatures look like after the black base coat. You could take a base coat that is the base color of your minis, the most used color, but I am going for something that is called zenithal highlights. So I'm trying to hit them with this matte white from an imaginary source of light, so they get contrast of white highlights and black shadows. And I think I held the spray can too far away. This is more gritty than I would have liked. Leave that to dry for a few minutes, maybe an hour, and then it's time to mount these on handles for painting. I'm just using empty pill bottles and stick the miniatures to them with this glue clay stuff that is multi-use and holds them pretty well. No need to get fancy. For paint I'm using this Army Painter Wargames starter set, which comes with a guidebook explaining how to assemble minis and how to paint them, which I totally didn't read beforehand, only later when I was waiting for paint to dry. It's not bad. Comes with a good selection of base colors, a brush, a very fine brush, and a strong tone wash. Got some more colors and brushes in reserve, but I want to see how far I can get with this. Also got some water to clean out brushes and an old Tupperware box that I'm using as a wet palette. So there's just a paper towel in there that I'm wetting, and I will mix my colors on there so they don't dry out during prolonged painting sessions. And you can also close up the box and continue painting another day. So to start with, I'm mixing some green and blue to get some sickly looking undead flesh. And you really only need a drop of paint at this stage and mix it right on the palette. If you want to thin it down, then go to the side of the paint where there's plenty of water to spare and roll the brush a bit to give it a sharp point for fine detail work. I found that holding my hands together like this allows me to paint quite stable and paint in very little details. As a rule of thumb, you should be sitting comfortably and be able to support your arms on the table or on your torso, so you don't have to put any effort in lifting them, and sit comfortably, which was a bit tricky. Sit comfortably while painting this under the camera. So here I'm mixing some leather brown and white right on the palette and on the miniature to paint the leather and the padded cloth. And since this is like a dirty mercenary guard type, you won't have clean clothes. I found that this mixing on the palette and on the miniature itself with a bit of water and running the paints together works really well for a miniature such as this. You don't need to be super clean. For the metal parts I'm doing a dry brush, so I put a bit of paint in this rough big brush and then dry most of it away on a paper towel. Then brush gently over the metal surfaces and just the highlights will catch the paint, giving it nice detail and contrast. Here I've mixed the slate gray and some green to give the impression of aged and corroded bronze, and that actually didn't look bad. For the walk I'm painting in the teeth. On a bigger model such as this is actually possible and gives some nice highlights. I'm also painting in the eyes red with the finest brush tip I could roll out. This is not a super fine brush and it works pretty well still. And while this base coat already looked pretty good on the walk, I decided to paint more black on it, give it a bit more contrast, and paint in some black highlights, kind of a pattern. Finally, I paint the bases. I tried black, that was kind of boring. So then I tried painting in the shadows that would match my zenithal highlights. And that, I think, actually works pretty well. It's a style that I like. So I experimented with different amounts of shadow on the other miniatures, and I think I nailed it with the walk. And after painting, make sure to clean out your brushes. Get all of that paint out there and leave them to dry. This is what the miniatures looked like at this point, and I wasn't too impressed, so I did some touch-ups where they need a little bit more paint and where I just missed some details. I also did a dry brush on the walk and forgot to film it. Now, after leaving that to dry for about an hour, it is time for a wash. This is an oil-based color, so I'm not doing it on my wet palette. Instead, I've got this bottle cap here. I'm preparing some rolled in paper towels. And from the guidebook, I got that you should just slather this on all over the model. And at this point I was really unsure if I was doing a good job, but I kept soldiering on, slathered that on everything except the walk. After 30 seconds it is time to soak up the excess wash. And what this will do, it will stick in the little nooks and crevices and highlight them, make them dark, and there will be less on the highlights. I didn't put any on the wall because I thought the dry brush looked nice. Sadly, at this point I forgot to take pictures because the wash really worked and I was proud of myself at that point. But then it is time to seal off the color with some matte clear varnish, and I just sprayed it on too thickly, too vigorously, and there was no correcting that. So, this is the result from this to this. Yeah, that is definitely too much varnish on the edge. So, results are a bit mixed. I really messed this up with the clear coat that is way too thick and is muting the color and hiding the detail. But I see potential here. If you look at the back side where I didn't spray as vigorously with the clear coat, we've got some nice color and shading and detail here. The strong tone wash really worked as advertised, to my surprise actually. So I think there's potential for the second batch to do better. Also, I want to try out, especially for these guys, an easier color scheme. Think I can just base coat them white, then do the highlights in green and give it a wash, and that might be enough. and that would be a really quick to paint color scheme. So from the current minis, the only thing that kind of survived with any detail intact is this walk, though it too got a good coating of clear coat. Well, but I think this first try is encouraging, and I will certainly be making a second episode of this series. So for now, thanks for watching and goodbye.